as we keep an eye on our national sovereignty here in the U.S. of A. Phyllis, good morning to you.
Well, good morning, Tim and Ed. Always great to join you. You do a great job for our country and the Family Association.
Well, thank you very much, Phyllis. You've got a new book out called No Higher Power.
Yes, and it's about Obama's war on religious freedom. And every place I go, I'm trying to remind the Christians that there is a war going on against Christianity. And you need to wake up and realize that we need to defend our faith and defend it in the public square. Because what these secularists want, and the ACLU is part of it, but Obama has lined up with them, is to say, well, you can have freedom of worship. It's okay if you go inside your church and shut the door and say a prayer. Nobody's going to bother you. But you can't do it in any public place, public park, public building, public school, anywhere where somebody else can hear you. And that's outrageous. That's contrary to all of American tradition about being very upfront about our belief in God and our understanding that he blessed our nation more than any other country in the world.
Phyllis, what would you say to Christians who are out there, who are listening, who are watching online, and you hear this kind of refrain sometimes from the Christian community? Well, look, Jesus is coming back soon, and of course, we all believe that Jesus could come back at any moment. But they say, look, Jesus is coming back soon. It's all supposed to get worse. That's what the Bible says. So you're wasting your time worrying about religious freedom. Because the Antichrist is right around the corner.
I would say you're the problem, sir.
Yes, that's a good answer. They are the problem. And anybody who tells us he can read Jesus' mind or God's mind, he can't do that.
I would say, what if you're wrong?
That's right.
Yeah, what if you didn't come back for 100 years?
Yeah, what if you're wrong and you have done nothing, and we surrender our country in the name of your belief?
Your eschatology.
Certainly in this country, it can get a lot worse, and we know that it's gotten a lot worse in many other countries. But we have maintained a religious freedom. The First Amendment says the free exercise of our religion. And so we have in God we trust on our money. We have under God in our Pledge of Allegiance. We open our public meetings with a prayer. And, of course, there are some judges who are trying to censor or rewrite the invocations we give at those events, but they're not really getting by with that yet. But we need to be on guard.
We're talking to Phyllis Schlafly of Eagle Forum. You can read about her organization at eagleforum.org. What's the name of the book, the latest book?
And you can read it in the book, a complete statement. It's called No Higher Power, Obama's War on Religious Freedom. And, of course, it's just as timely as it was last year because he got reelected, and he's still got this antagonism to any public statement of religion that we just can't let him get by with.
Nothing has brought this to the fore more than the Obamacare bill that became law, and the fact that it forces employers to pay for contraception and also abortifacients. Forcing so if you have a religious...
Yes, well, that's a very important point. And again, as I said, they say you go inside your church and shut the door, that you can say a prayer, that's okay. But you and I know that the Christian denominations operate all kinds of sort of auxiliary institutions, like schools, like colleges, like
Yes.
hospitals, like services for the poor, and so forth. And Obama wants to say they don't have any religious freedom because they're not a church. And this is ridiculous. And so he is telling them that they must provide insurance for all of their employees that includes things that a lot of them believe are contrary to their religion. As you mentioned, the abortifacients and the sterilization procedures and the contraceptives. And if you don't, you will pay a hefty fine. And it's, I think it's $2,000 per employee, which is enough to put you out of business. And let me remind you how really nasty the Obama administration is. There was a Lutheran school, I think it was in Georgia, I'm not sure of the state, and they fired a teacher, and it's none of your business or mine why. That should be their right to do that. And she sued to get her job back, and she got the help of the Obama administration lawyers. They took the case all the way to the Supreme Court. That wanted the government to be able to tell this Lutheran school who they could have as a teacher. You get that? And the Supreme Court did knock them down 9-0, which was really a surprise. But anyway, they did that. So every now and then the court does something right.
The U.S. Supreme Court, 9-0?
Right. U.S. Supreme Court.
Well, I didn't think they could agree on 9-0.
9-0.
Oh, you know, whether the sun is hot.
Yeah.
You know, they think that'd be a 7-2 split.
Right.
You know, that's amazing.
Right. You can refer to my other recent book called The Supremacists, and how bad how the Supreme Court has really kind of changed the law in a lot of areas, like life, like property, like immigration, like criminal law, all kinds of things. They think they're in charge of everything and can make these decisions. And you know that one of the biggest decisions in history is going to come down in June, in which they have they think they have the right to overturn the definition of marriage, which we've all enjoyed since year one. And the idea that 5 people on the Supreme Court should be able to rewrite what marriage is, that we've understood in all states and in our country from the very beginning, since the Pilgrims landed on the East Coast and centuries before that, is just not acceptable in a democracy. And we all have to be prepared for that.
Just to remind our listeners what Phyllis is talking about, if you don't know, you remember the vote in California in 2008 on the same day that we elected President Obama versus John McCain. People remember that day. In the state of California, the citizens there voted on whether or not to redefine marriage. And they voted to keep marriage as
amended their constitution.
They amended their constitution.
Proposition
they amended
8.
their state constitution. A very serious vote.
The vote of the people.
And 7 million people voted to define marriage in California as between a man and a woman. It was 52% for and 48% against. Well, that was challenged in federal court.
Sure, they ran to the judges to try to get them to overturn.
And got one judge. One judge overturned 7 million people. One federal judge. That's why I call federal judges little gods.
Who happened to be a homosexual himself.
Yeah, and he didn't. He didn't recuse himself. Even though, he wrote in a very biased way in his opinion about this. But the point is that this case now has reached the United States Supreme Court. It will be heard in about, 10 days from now?
No, it's been heard.
I don't know. We don't know exactly when they have their vote and decide it. But they usually release their most controversial decisions the last week of the session, which is usually the last week of June, and then they take off on an international junket so you can't find them.
But they're hearing the case, I don't know, the next few days.
Yes, right.
And in addition to the Prop 8 case, which is the California case, the Defense of Marriage Act will be a case heard before the Supreme Court as well. And the same in California, where Governor Jerry Brown and Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger prior to him they would not defend the law. They would, in court. And so the Obama administration says we will not defend the Defense of Marriage Act, which is a federally enacted law from 1996, which was passed by Congress and signed by then President Bill Clinton.
And Tim, the Constitution makes it the duty of the president, and I quote, to take care that the laws are faithfully executed. Yeah,
and here is President Obama saying, "I don't give a rip about that."
That's right.
What he said was, Eric Holder, we're not gonna go to bat
because we don't think it's constitutional.
Yeah, so we're not going to. So then it was left for John Boehner and the Republicans in the House to hire lawyers, I guess, to defend the federal law.
Yeah,
and so those two cases are being heard. Not much we can do at this point except ask people, to pray about
Right.
the
Yeah, I hope
situation.
I hope everybody listening to this program will pray that the Supreme Court does not presume to upset the law of marriage.
Yeah, because I don't know, have we ever in human history had homosexual marriage?
No. I don't think it's
this
ever.
would be-
Well, just I think the Netherlands was the first in the 1990s, but that window of 20 years where you have some countries in Western civilization doing that, that is the first, as far as I know, that is the first time in human history,
Right, that's what I'm saying.
where homosexual marriage has been promoted and sanctioned by governments. I think because everybody else knows better that it's a man and a woman that create a marriage union.
Well, it could continue the human race.
Right.
Huh? I mean, it's
Right, and what marriage does, of course, marriage makes it the responsibility of a man and a woman to take care of these little bundles of energy that appear when men and women get together.
Right.
And it also identifies the rights of the father. The feminist movement has been extremely anti-father in so many ways, and so they're part of this equation of trying to upset and get rid of traditional marriage.
I was just thinking back. You were talking about that. Phyllis Schlafly's with us on the program today. You remember when they, this is probably 20 years ago, maybe longer, 25 years ago. You remember that show on CBS called Murphy Brown?
Right.
And
Yeah.
it was Candace Bergman, I think was her name. She was the actress. Anyway, she played the part of a single mother, and she had a baby born out of wedlock on TV at the time on her show, and it was part of, the modern woman, doesn't need a man, doesn't need a husband. I think Dan Quayle criticized
Right. In a
that
speech.
in a speech.
And they were so ugly. The whole media, as well as the feminist movement, were just so ugly and mean to Dan Quayle for
Yes.
telling the truth.
Yeah, exactly, for telling the truth. And now we look back and we see the damage that's been done by this philosophy that
Well, the damage, 41% of babies in America were illegitimate, born last year. And just
41
think, 41% of the babies born in this country are growing up without their own father in the home.
And if you look at the statistics, which I saw the other day, I was stunned by all the social problems, including gang participation, imprisonment,
Poor performance in
Crime,
education,
drugs.
crime, yeah.
all
teenage
those things
sex,
skyrocket among
dropouts,
children.
runaways, suicide, you name it. The majority of all the social ills come out of mother-headed households.
Yeah, where there is no dad.
That's
and
right.
so we can't, don't tell us anymore that it doesn't matter.
Right.
We're not obviously coming down,
Well, in
coming
fact-
down on single mothers who, are in this situation by no choice of their own. But what we're talking about here is this idea, this philosophy that that a father doesn't matter.
Right.
Or that he's just the same as a woman.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Because
and
he
in
isn't.
and in the late 1990s, there was actually a cover story for the Atlantic magazine that said in big, bold letters, Dan Quayle was right. It is written by, I don't remember now, but it was a liberal who, and it's a fairly liberal magazine. It was very interesting to see the flip-flop there, and it actually caused quite a stir because this individual had done exactly what you two are talking about, looked at the statistics and said, you know what, Dan Quayle was right. If you just look at the evidence about single mother households without a dad there, and as you said, Tim, we want to reiterate, there are some women who are doing a heroic job
Doing the
trying to
best they
raise their
can.
children under difficult circumstances, but the facts are the facts, and those single parent households and the kids who are raised in them are up against
Right.
data and the statistics.
Absolutely. Talking to Phyllis Schlafly here, president of Eagle Forum. Phyllis, I know one of the other issues, by the way, I meant to mention this a few minutes ago. Folks, you have to watch the Obama administration and the way they use language. They're very crafty, and not just the Obama administration, but the secular progressives or the secular left in this country. Here's what they're promoting now, if you listen very carefully. They're saying, as Phyllis said earlier, they will admit to you, yes, there is freedom of worship in America under the First Amendment. Watch that now. freedom of worship. Okay, that's incorrect, but it sounds correct. We